Hey everyone, and welcome back to Rowing with the Homies. Apologies for the delay in recording new episodes over the past 2 weeks. Feels like it's been longer than that, but it's just been 2 weeks. We've had some work done on the house, and routines were disrupted, and so it's been hard to find space and honestly the energy to kind of focus on getting these outlines ready and sitting to row at the machine. But the trade-off is that it allowed us to spend a lot of really cool and interesting quality time together as a family. We are lucky enough in that we have enough space in our home that as they were resurfacing the floors in some of the living spaces of our house, that we were able to camp out together on a different floor. So it's been cool. And as we are now transitioning back to school and the spaces are returning to where they were before, I'm not gonna lie, I've experienced a sort of loss through the process as we transition back to, I guess, what looks more normal. There is a sort of sentimental comfort in being able to spend so much time sharing space with Eva and our two kids, and even our youngest has been verbally really sad about ending the summer camping trip, which is kind of what she's calling it. We've been camping out together in the basement, and that really leads me into kind of what I want to talk about today. Talking about transitions, talking about routines and how we interrupt or change routines. Also talking about milestones and how we mark time, sort of in the air with the back to school season. And before we dig into that, I just want to say thank you for joining me. I know that inconsistency is kind of not the best thing for helping to maintain an audience and maintain connection. But, being gentle on myself and understanding that this is also very much about working through my own mental health and my own physical health. So I take the time when I need to. But I am very appreciative that you're here. I hope that you're finding time and space for some physical activity in your life. And while Eva and I have been doing our best to maintain our physical routines, walking every day, it's been hard, especially with the summer heat and the thunderstorms. So I'm very glad to be back on the rower here with you today. And as I was talking about, the kids went back to school this week, and the shift in the house is immediately tangible. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was talking with Eva about how I felt pulled in many directions, and some of that is work related, and some of that is just the loose threads in my brain, but some of it is having the kids here at home too, and their needs, their desire to have attention, and the sudden absence of the chaos, the quietness, is definitely something to have to readjust to. One moment hearing the noise and chaos of the house as they made whatever snack was up next, and then to the more quiet space that we have now. It is bittersweet. And also this time of year always brings me back to my own journey, my own time as a teacher, the smells that go along with organizing a classroom, the crunch of time and being places on time and feeling that pressure. It's different now to be working remote and not have to deal with that. That's kind of what's on my mind today. And like many families, we have our back to school rituals, the shopping, the picking of the outfits, the hairstyles, Eva doing the very time-consuming work of dyeing hair, organizing backpacks. It's a lot, but it's also grounding in its process. And that back to school first day routine of taking the kids out and getting their back to school picture. They resist it, of course. They call us silly, but I hope one day they'll appreciate it. And, you know, as we look at those pictures, they're more than just tradition. They're records of growth. They're records of the passage of time and the physical changes that they and we are going through. New missing teeth, new styles, and just understanding that it also means the abstract, new challenges, new social networks, things like that. And these milestones really carry a gravity beyond childhood. When we're kids, our lives are full of obvious milestones, firsts of all kind, and you know, moving up through the grades and graduation and first jobs and all of those kinds of things. But as adults, those big, clear moments become fewer and farther between. Years start to blur, and the milestones become less specific externally and much more internally defined. And I think that's why these rituals like first day photos or birthdays, holiday celebrations, even if we don't necessarily subscribe to the holiday traditions themselves, the excuses to take a moment to pause and to recognize, they take on serious significance. And this is something that comes up a lot with Eva and I as we discuss keeping track of our lives, both as individuals and together. And these milestones are really important. They serve as punctuation marks in the ongoing experience of growth, of aging. They force us to pause and reflect, to acknowledge change, even if it isn't as visible as a new outfit or that sudden growth spurt. And, you know, it's hard to think about these moments. I found myself getting really emotional a lot over the past few days, over the past week. It's complicated because they're joyful moments and they're painful moments. And as with anything that's truly meaningful and rich, it's messy and it's hard. And it doesn't really lend itself to being easily named. I think back to my 17 years as a classroom teacher, all of the sensory details that came with the classroom that I really miss, especially getting to know a new crop of students. And now, as I work remotely, I feel like sometimes a little bit left out. It's kind of lonely at times, but at the same time, I value the quiet and the space and the room for introspection, because a lot of what came with that was a giving, a sharing, and it was exhausting. But it is really great to get to watch our kids as they experience these milestones, these very visible moments and points of reflection. Even beyond parenting, these moments remind me of how modern life, with its dizzying pace, often robs us of real opportunities for pause, and how rarely we stop to acknowledge our own milestones or transitions fully. And these rituals really help us to reclaim that space, to reflect, and to grow. That gets me thinking about the broader conversation about education and its importance beyond just as a source of economic energy, both as a as a free childcare service so that we adults can work, and beyond the potential development of young future employees. I think it really is important to reflect on public education's past in the United States and where it's headed. If it's headed anywhere, because honestly, I think that's very much in doubt. And I think the significance I see in our children's milestones relate directly to that institution, to public schools. And as I'm talking about the transitions that we're all going through in our immediate lives, whether it's changing jobs or changing routines at home or going back to school, public education is also going through a transition. And I think the most obvious marker is a profound erosion of trust in the institution. And that erosion of trust takes a different form depending on, for lack of a better descriptor, where you fall in the political ideological continuum. For much of the 20th century, public schools were kind of the central pillars of American society, the things that gave common experience to all of us. After World War II, initiatives like the GI Bill expanded access to education, reinforcing the idea that learning was the key to opportunity and experience. The Cold War further spurred federal investment in science and math education, and schools became central to a sense of national pride. But over the decades, cracks emerged. In 1983, the report, A Nation at Risk, painted a dire picture of declining standards, igniting a rapid shift toward accountability, specifically through standardized testing. And while that report was a little before my time in school, my entire time as a public education student was dealing with the aftermath of that report of A Nation at Risk. And the rapid implementation of standardized testing through elementary, middle, and high school. In 2002, the No Child Left Behind Act deepened the approach of heavy assessment and linked the funding of schools to student performance on these assessments, which created a system where many schools, usually those often in underserved communities, were labeled as failing. And because of that status, instead of receiving the additional support that they needed, they were defunded. And of course, this is all very complex. The consequences were equally complex. Curriculum has narrowed. Teaching to the test became a much more common practice. And a sense of distrust grew between communities and their schools. More recently, debates over things like Common Core standards and then the strain of the COVID-19 pandemic have added to this tension. Remote learning reopened debates about inequities in access and really highlighted how fragile the whole system feels. All of this is born on the backs of teachers. Teachers who were suddenly losing autonomy and a sense of control, a sense of safety was taken. And while much of this conversation is political, the reality of it is deeply personal. No matter where you live, urban, suburban, rural, wealthy, poor, all of that affects directly how you and I experience public education. More importantly, it's how our kids do. That diversity is very important. And at the same time, the way that that diversity is handled does not always match the need. And these erosions of trust reflect broader societal shifts, polarization, economic pressures, and questions about the role of institutions. And these shifts ripple into the experiences of families like ours, like yours, shaping the milestones we celebrate and the challenges we face. I still deeply believe in the value and importance of public education. Our kids still go to public schools. We actually just transitioned our younger child out of a charter school, a public charter school, but still a charter school, because we felt her experience was limited and protected in a way that was not safe in the way that administrators really liked to sell. It was safe in that it was limited, both in terms of the types of students that attended the school, but also in the content as well. And while the content being given to our students as learning materials are more limited than they were, while teachers are more hindered in how they can teach, the experience that our children will get in a public school are more honest and more reflective of the communities in which they live. And that is invaluable, and it is necessary for functioning. And all this talk of transitions and changes, forgive the rough transition here, leads me to my final segment and how today depression feels like the sometimes false promise of a new routine. This week the kids went back to school, and I'm torn in how I feel about it. On the one hand, I'm really excited for quiet. Working at home is very nice. I enjoy it. And one of the perks also is getting to work with my partner at home sometimes when she's not seeing clients in her office. And having the quiet for us to either have conversations or to focus, to lock in, is really powerful, and I'm thankful for it. And at the same time, I miss the interruptions. I miss the clamoring. I miss the laughing and the fighting and everything that comes with it. I miss the chaos. My anxiety is lower in the immediate sense, but I, of course, now have the different kind of anxiety, the worry about my kids and how they're dealing with the madness that is the world. It's a giving up of a sense of control of one type for a more limited sense of control. It's a trading of productivity for the longing for my family. There's good and bad. The new routine. Sometimes it is a boon, but sometimes it yields to the old symptoms, because shifts don't last. Depression is cyclical. And with any routine, there's comfort. And with any change in routine, there can be excitement and relief. And the false sense that things are changing permanently. And maybe they are. But we can have a knack for leaning too heavily into what the promise of that change could be. And when we settle into that new routine, the old symptoms are still there. And it can feel like a whiplash. The sense that that stability that I feel isn't really there. Being mindful of how I feel, being honest about what the situation is, talking through what I'm experiencing, taking note of both the positives and the negatives are essential to regulating. Having other routines to keep things in balance. All right, as the routine of work at home was interrupted, ideally the physical exercise maintains, right? So I'm getting back into that with this, because sometimes it's boring to have a routine, but the routine also creates stability. And part of that whiplash, part of that back and forth can have the consequence of creating a distrust of our own emotions, because we have that excitement of the newness only to be betrayed by the sudden downturn that comes soon after the crash. And it's exhausting. So be truthful to yourself. Remember, it ebbs and flows. Always. Also, it's important to have support, to find someone to talk to practice mindfulness, to have a community, and to be gentle with yourself. It's a process, especially as we work through times of transition. Remember that your experience is real, it's valid, and you are not alone. I encourage you to to reach out to friends, to family, to anyone who can support you. That's it for this episode. I'd love to hear from you about how your back to school season feels. You can connect with me on social media or send me a message to finlos@finloslives.com. If you found something valuable or interesting in this episode, I hope you'll share it with somebody. Please subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform. Keep moving, keep doing the work, and I look forward to our next conversation.